Commander Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the research station corridor. The emergency lights cast eerie red shadows across her face as she listened to the steady breathing of the 6 alien younglings huddled behind her. Their large, luminous eyes reflected the dim light, filled with terror that needed no translation. The Kalari children had been evacuating with their families when the Ravak hunting pack broke through the outer defenses. Now Sarah was all that stood between these innocent beings and certain death. She checked her rifle's charge indicator, 43%. Not nearly enough for what was coming. The Ravak were nightmare creatures from the galaxy's darkest corners. Standing 8 feet tall on powerful hind legs, they moved with deadly grace through the shadows. Their razor-sharp claws could tear through standard armor plating like paper. Most terrifying of all, they hunted for sport, taking particular pleasure in pursuing the young and helpless. Sarah had been stationed on Research Outpost Delta 7 for 18 months, studying peaceful first contact protocols with the Kalari Federation. The assignment was supposed to be safe, a chance to prove that humans could be valuable diplomatic partners rather than the primitive warriors most alien species believed them to be. The irony wasn't lost on her now. A distant howl echoed through the ventilation system, followed by the scrape of claws against metal. The Kalari younglings pressed closer together, their soft whimpering sounds breaking Sarah's heart. The eldest couldn't be more than 10 years old in human terms. They had done nothing to deserve this fate. Sarah activated her comm unit, hoping against hope for a response from the evacuation shuttles. Static answered her call. The Ravak had jammed all communications before beginning their hunt. Standard predator tactics: isolate the prey, eliminate escape routes, then close in for the kill. The research station's automated systems continued their evacuation announcements in 3 languages. All personnel report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. But Sarah knew the truth. The adult Kalari were either dead or scattered across the station's maze-like corridors. The human diplomatic team had been in the outer sections when the attack began. She was alone with these children, and help wasn't coming. Another howl, closer this time. The Kalari younglings trembled against her legs, their small hands clutching at her uniform. Sarah looked down at their innocent faces and felt something primal awaken deep in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to find the nearest escape pod and flee to safety. Instead, she knelt down and spoke to the children in their own language, her words carefully chosen to project calm confidence. Stay very quiet and very close to me. I will not let them hurt you. The eldest youngling, a female with brilliant silver eyes, looked up at Sarah with desperate hope. But you are only one, and they are many. How can you fight the shadow hunters? Sarah smiled grimly and stood, checking her weapon one final time. Because, little one, they don't know what a human is capable of when something precious needs protecting. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from around the corner, heavy, deliberate, savoring the hunt. The Ravak pack was taking their time, enjoying the fear they could smell in the air. They had probably never encountered a human before, certainly never one willing to stand and fight against impossible odds. Sarah positioned herself directly in front of the younglings, her rifle aimed down the corridor. The red emergency lighting flickered ominously, casting dancing shadows that could hide a dozen predators. She regulated her breathing, calling upon years of military training that she had hoped never to use in a diplomatic posting. The footsteps stopped just beyond visual range. Sarah could hear the Ravak communicating in their guttural language, probably discussing the best approach to eliminate the lone guardian standing between them and their intended prey. They would be confused by her behavior. Most species fled when faced with Ravak hunters. Standing to fight was considered either insanity or futile bravery. Sarah Chen wasn't insane, and she didn't consider her actions futile. She was a human being, and these children were under her protection. That simple fact changed everything about the tactical situation, even if the Ravak couldn't understand it yet. The first shadow appeared at the edge of the corridor, moving with predatory grace. Sarah's finger found her rifle's trigger as ancient instincts older than civilization itself began to surge through her veins. The hunt was about to begin, but the Ravak had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed they were the only predators in this station. The first Ravak stepped into the flickering light, and Sarah got her first clear look at humanity's enemy. The creature was even more terrifying than the briefing files had suggested. Midnight black scales covered its muscular frame, and rows of curved teeth gleamed in its elongated muzzle. its yellow eyes fixed on the Kalari younglings with predatory hunger. Sarah didn't hesitate. Her first plasma burst caught the Ravek center mass, the energy bolt searing through scale and flesh. The creature's howl of pain and surprise echoed through the corridor as it stumbled backward into the shadows. But Sarah knew that one wounded predator meant 5 more would be coming fast. She was right. The pack surged forward as one, their claws clicking against the metal decking as they moved with terrifying coordination. Sarah's military training kicked in automatically: short, controlled bursts, constant movement, use the environment. The corridor's narrow confines worked in her favor, limiting their ability to surround her position. The second Ravek leaped high, attempting to use the ceiling-mounted conduits to drop down behind her. Sarah spun and fired without conscious thought, the plasma bolt catching the creature mid-leap. It crashed into the wall with bone-breaking force, but 2 more immediately took its place. Behind her, the Kalari younglings pressed against the wall, their terrified breathing the only sound they made. Their absolute trust in her protection fed something fierce and protective deep in Sarah's core. These children would not die while she still drew breath. The lead Ravek spoke in accented standard, its voice a rasping growl. "Human thing, you fight well for prey. Stand aside and we will kill you quickly. Continue to resist and we will feast on your flesh while you watch us devour the young ones." Sarah's response was another plasma burst that scorched the creature's shoulder. "Counteroffer," she said through gritted teeth. "Turn around and leave, and I'll let you live long enough to regret coming here." The Ravek pack leader's laugh was like breaking glass. Bold words from a single human. "We have studied your species, flesh thing. You are weak. You are slow. You break easily when properly motivated." Sarah felt something cold and dangerous smile in her chest. "You studied wrong." The pack attacked in perfect coordination, moving like a single deadly organism. Sarah's world narrowed to targets, trajectories, and trigger pulls. Her rifle whined as the plasma chamber cycled rapidly, each shot finding its mark with mechanical precision. Years of combat training merged with something older and more primal, the absolute refusal to yield when protecting innocence. The fourth Ravek managed to get close enough to swipe at her with razor claws. Sarah ducked under the attack and drove her rifle stock into the creature's throat, following up with a point-blank plasma burst that sent it crashing into its packmates. But the numbers were telling. Her rifle's charge indicator dropped to 20%, then 15%. The pack was learning her tactics, adapting their approach. They began using hit-and-run attacks, forcing her to constantly reposition to maintain line of sight on the younglings. The pack leader hung back, studying her movements with intelligent eyes. "You fight like a Ravek, human thing. But you are still prey. Your weapon fails soon, and then we feed." Sarah's rifle clicked empty just as 2 Ravek rushed her position simultaneously. She rolled aside, drawing her sidearm while calling up the emergency protocols she hoped never to use. The younglings needed more time, and there was only one way to give it to them. She activated her suit's emergency beacon, not a distress call, but a code that would seal the corridor behind them and activate the station's internal defenses. It would take 30 seconds to engage, time she didn't have with an empty rifle and 5 Ravek closing in. The pack leader sensed victory. "Now you understand, human thing. Your weapons are toys. Your body is soft. You should have fled when you had the chance." Sarah holstered her useless rifle and did something that made every Ravek freeze in confusion. She smiled, baring her teeth in an expression that was anything but submissive. The sound that emerged from her throat started low, building in intensity until it filled the corridor with primal menace. She was growling. The Ravek pack leader took an involuntary step backward, its predatory instincts suddenly screaming warnings it didn't understand. The human scent had changed, becoming something that triggered deep genetic memories of apex predators. Her posture had shifted from defensive to aggressively territorial. Behind Sarah, the eldest Kalari youngling whispered in amazement. "The protector human makes the war sound of the ancient ones." Sarah's growl deepened, and she took a step forward. Her empty hands had somehow become weapons, fingers curved like claws, body coiled for violence. The Ravek pack found themselves facing something their racial memory warned them about: a true predator defending its pack. The corridor's emergency lights flickered once more and, then, bathed everything in brilliant light as the station's defensive systems came online. But, by then, the psychological damage was done. The Ravek pack faced a human who had stopped pretending to be civilized, and their predatory confidence began to crack. 20 seconds left on the emergency seal. Sarah's growl became a roar that promised death to anything that threatened her charges. The transformation in Sarah was visible and terrifying. The diplomatic facade melted away completely, revealing something that made the Ravek pack suddenly understand why humans had earned such fearsome reputations in the galaxy's military records. Her eyes had gone cold and predatory, calculating angles of attack with frightening precision. The pack leader snarled, trying to reassert dominance, but uncertainty flickered in its yellow eyes. You make noise like a hunter, but you have no claws, no fangs. You are still soft prey flesh. Sarah's response was to charge directly at the largest Ravek, her empty hands moving faster than the creature thought possible. She grabbed its extended arm and used its own momentum to slam it face-first into the corridor wall. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the passage as the creature slumped to the deck, unconscious or dead. The remaining 4 Ravek attacked as one, but something had fundamentally changed in the corridor's dynamics. Sarah moved like she had been born for violence, using the fallen creature's body as both shield and weapon. She rolled, ducked, and struck with mechanical efficiency that spoke of extensive hand-to-hand combat training. A Ravek claw sliced across her shoulder, tearing through her uniform and drawing blood. Sarah didn't even flinch. She grabbed the creature's wrist, twisted until something snapped, then drove her elbow into its throat with enough force to crush its windpipe. It dropped choking and gasping beside its packmate. The pack leader's confidence evaporated entirely as it watched 2 of its hunters fall to an unarmed human. This wasn't possible. Humans were weak, civilized beings who relied on technology and diplomacy. They weren't supposed to be able to fight like this. What are you? The creature rasped, backing away from Sarah's advance. Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I'm what happens when a social persistence hunter decides something is worth protecting. She lunged at the 3rd Ravek before it could react, her hands finding pressure points that dropped the creature in convulsions. Her knowledge of alien anatomy, gained through months of diplomatic study, had become a weapon. Every weakness, every vulnerable spot was mapped in her mind. The pack leader and its final companion exchanged glances filled with something Ravek rarely experienced: fear. The human had systematically dismantled their pack using nothing but her bare hands and tactical knowledge. This wasn't how predator-prey relationships were supposed to work. Behind Sarah, the Kalari younglings watched in silent amazement as their protector proved that humans earned their reputation through more than just technology. The eldest youngling understood now why the galactic databases classified humans as a caution level 7th species despite their apparent physical limitations. The emergency countdown reached 10 seconds. The corridor's blast doors began their pre-seal warning sequence, filling the passage with urgent chimes. Soon this section would be completely isolated, trapping everyone inside until rescue teams could cut through the reinforced barriers. The pack leader made its decision. Retreat, it snarled to its remaining companion. This is not worth the cost. But Sarah had other plans. The moment they turned to flee, she was after them, moving with the relentless pace that had made humans the galaxy's most feared pursuit predators. The pack leader felt something it had never experienced before: the terror of being hunted by something that would never stop, never tire, never give up the chase. You came here to hunt children, Sarah's voice followed them down the corridor, cold and implacable. Now you get to learn what it feels like to be prey. The remaining Ravek ran faster than they ever had in their lives, but they could hear the human behind them, her steady footsteps never faltering. She wasn't trying to catch them, she was herding them, driving them toward the outer sections where the station's automated defenses would finish what she had started. 3 seconds on the countdown. Sarah turned and sprinted back toward the younglings, diving through the blast door opening just as the heavy barriers slammed shut. The corridor sealed with a solid thunk that meant safety for her charges. She landed hard on the deck, rolling to absorb the impact. Blood from her shoulder wound left a small trail, but she ignored the injury entirely. Her first concern was the 6 Kalari younglings who stood staring at her with expressions of awe and gratitude. "Are you injured?" she asked in their language, quickly checking each child for wounds. The eldest youngling approached her carefully, no longer afraid but deeply respectful. "Protector human, you fought like the ancient war spirits from our oldest stories. We have never seen such fierce guardianship." Sarah's breathing began to return to normal as the adrenaline faded. The diplomatic training reasserted itself, but something fundamental had changed in how these younglings would remember humans. She had proven that her species' reputation for protective violence was more than just military propaganda. The danger has passed, she told them gently, settling against the wall as exhaustion began to set in. Help will come soon. But, privately, Sarah knew this incident would ripple through galactic diplomatic channels. The Ravak pack that escaped would carry stories of the human who fought like a demon to protect alien children. The Kalari Federation would have new appreciation for human defensive capabilities. Most importantly, 6 young lives had been saved, and Saracen had demonstrated that humans didn't just talk about protecting the innocent, they bled for it. The sealed corridor became a sanctuary of relative calm after the violence. Sarah slumped against the wall, finally, allowing herself to feel the exhaustion that came with the adrenaline crash. Her shoulder throbbed where the Ravak claws had found their mark, but the wound was shallow. She had been lucky. The Kalari younglings arranged themselves in a protective circle around her, their large eyes filled with concern. The eldest female approached with cautious steps, holding a small medical kit she had found in an emergency compartment. "Protector human, you are injured. Please allow us to help you as you helped us." Sarah smiled despite her fatigue. These children had just witnessed brutal violence, yet their first instinct was to care for their guardian. The Kalari were truly a gentle species, which made the Ravak attack even more senseless. As the youngest cleaned and bandaged her shoulder with surprising skill, Sarah activated her emergency communicator. The sealed blast doors should have automatically sent distress signals to the nearest patrol vessels. Help would come, but it might take hours to cut through the reinforced barriers. "Commander Chen, this is Captain Rodriguez aboard the UES Valiant. Please respond if you can hear this transmission." Sarah's relief was overwhelming. The human patrol ship was already in the system. "Rodriguez, this is Chen. I'm sealed in Corridor 7 Alpha with 6 Kalari younglings. We're secure but need extraction." "Copy that, Commander. We've got Kalari rescue ships en route as well. What's your status on the Ravak incursion?" Sarah looked at the blast door that separated them from the bodies of the creatures she had killed. "Threat neutralized in this section. Be advised that remaining hostiles fled toward the outer docking bays." "Understood. Medical teams are standing by. ETA on extraction is 40 minutes. As the communication ended, Sarah found herself surrounded by 6 pairs of luminous alien eyes, all looking at her with a mixture of gratitude and newfound respect. The eldest youngling spoke for the group. "Protector human, we must ask you something important. Are all humans like you?" Sarah considered the question carefully. How could she explain that humans were simultaneously the galaxy's most diplomatic species and its most dangerous when pushed to extremes? That they could write poetry and wage war with equal passion? "Humans are complex," she finally answered. "We prefer to solve problems with words and cooperation. But, when innocent lives are threatened, especially children, we become something different. Something fierce." A younger child, barely old enough to speak clearly, approached with shy steps. "Will you tell us about human younglings? Do they have guardians who fight like you?" Sarah's expression softened completely. "Human younglings are protected by parents, teachers, soldiers, and sometimes complete strangers who see them in danger. Every adult human has the responsibility to keep children safe, no matter whose children they are." The eldest youngling translated this concept for the smaller ones, and Sarah watched their expressions change to wonder. In Kalari society, protection was typically limited to family groups. The idea that an entire species would fight for any child was revolutionary to them. Over the next half hour, as they waited for rescue, Sarah found herself answering dozens of questions about human culture, society, and protective instincts. The younglings were particularly fascinated by the concept of adoption, humans caring for young that weren't genetically related. "So human pack bonds are chosen rather than born?" asked one of the middle children. "Often, yes. Humans believe that love and choice can be stronger than blood relations. We have a saying, the family you choose is just as important as the family you're born into." The children absorbed this information with the intense curiosity that seemed universal among young sapient species. Sarah realized that this conversation might be more diplomatically significant than any formal treaty negotiation. When the cutting torches finally broke through the blast door, the rescue teams found a scene that would be remembered in both human and Kalari diplomatic circles for years to come. Commander Saracen sat surrounded by 6 alien younglings, all of them laughing at a story she was telling about human children learning to walk. Captain Rodriguez surveyed the corridor's battle damage with professional appreciation. Commander, preliminary reports suggest you eliminated 5 Ravek hostiles single-handedly. That's going to make some interesting reading in the after-action reports. Sarah stood slowly, her legs still unsteady from the extended adrenaline rush. The younglings needed protection. I provided it. The Kalari rescue team leader approached with deep formal bows. Commander Chen, the Kalari Federation owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You risked your life for our children without hesitation. Any human would have done the same, Sarah replied simply. But, as the rescue teams escorted the younglings to safety, the eldest female turned back to Sarah with one final question that would echo through galactic diplomatic channels for decades. Protector human, if your species fights so fiercely to defend the young, what happens when someone threatens your own children? Sarah's smile held promise and warning in equal measure. Then, the galaxy learns why Y species choose to be humanity's friends rather than its enemies. The rescue teams completed their evacuation with new understanding of why human diplomatic missions always included military advisors, and why the galaxy's predator species gave human space such a wide berth. 6 months after the incident at Research Outpost Delta 7, Commander Saracen stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session on species protection protocols. The chamber buzzed with representatives from dozens of worlds, all eager to understand how a single human had fundamentally altered the galaxy's perception of her species. The Kalari Federation's ambassador approached the podium with ceremonial grace, her flowing robes marked with symbols of highest honor. Behind her, 6 young Kalari stood in formal diplomatic dress, the same younglings Sarah had protected. Honored counselors, 6 months ago, we believed we understood humanity's place in galactic society. We saw them as skilled diplomats and traitors, valuable but physically limited allies who relied on technology to overcome natural disadvantages. The ambassador paused, allowing her words to resonate through the chamber's translation systems. We were profoundly mistaken. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates as the ambassador activated the holographic display. Security footage from the research station played in stark detail, showing Sarah's transformation from diplomat to warrior when the younglings were threatened. What you witness here is not an aberration or military specialist. Commander Chen was assigned to our station as a cultural liaison, a scholar, not a soldier. Yet when our children faced death, she became something that terrifies even the galaxy's apex predators. The footage showed Sarah's barehanded destruction of the Ravek pack, her refusal to retreat, her protective growl that made creatures bred for hunting reconsider their life choices. Several council members shifted uncomfortably as they realized they might have misjudged humanity entirely. The eldest Kalari youngling stepped forward, her voice clear despite her nervousness. Honored counselors, the protector human taught us that strength is not measured in claws or fangs, but in the willingness to stand between danger and innocence. She bled for us, fought for us, and would have died for us without hesitation. The Ravek Empire's representative, a scarred veteran of countless hunts, rose with obvious reluctance. The pack that survived this encounter has been debriefed. Their reports confirm that humans possess predatory capabilities that our previous intelligence grossly underestimated. We formally request revision of humanity's threat assessment from minimal to extreme caution advised. This declaration sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Ravek Empire had never acknowledged any species as a serious threat to their hunting superiority. Sarah herself sat quietly in the witness section, still uncomfortable with the attention her actions had generated. She had simply done what any decent being would do when children were threatened. The galaxy's reaction suggested that such basic protective instincts were far rarer than she had assumed. The council chairman, an ancient being whose species had mediated galactic disputes for millennia, spoke with grave authority. The events at Delta 7 have revealed a fundamental truth about humanity that we must address. They are not merely technological innovators or skilled diplomats. They are a species that has weaponized compassion itself. He gestured toward the recorded footage. Observe how Commander Chen's protective instincts override every survival impulse. This is not trained behavior, it is the evolutionary core of her species. Humans will fight hopeless battles to protect the innocent, regardless of species, origin, or political affiliation. A delegate from the Centauri Republic raised a tentacled appendage. Chairman, how do we classify a species that becomes more dangerous when protecting others rather than themselves? The question hung in the chamber's filtered atmosphere as dozens of civilizations grappled with implications that stretched far beyond military assessment. If humans would fight this fiercely for alien children they barely knew, what would they do for their own allies? Their own worlds? The Kalari ambassador answered with quiet certainty. You classify them as the species you most want as friends, and least want as enemies. You recognize that their greatest strength is not their weapons or ships, but their absolute refusal to abandon those who depend on them. The chairman nodded slowly. Motion to amend the Galactic Species Database. Humanity's protective classification is hereby upgraded from Standard Diplomatic to Critical Alliance Priority. It is the recommendation of this Council that all member species extend full cooperation and mutual defense agreements with human territories. The vote was unanimous. As the session concluded, Sarah found herself surrounded by the 6 Kalari younglings she had protected. They presented her with a small crystalline sculpture, their species' highest honor for guardianship. Protector Human, the eldest said with formal dignity, you gave us our lives, but, more than that, you gave our entire species a new understanding of what friendship truly means. Sarah accepted the gift with genuine humility. You gave me something too, she replied. You reminded me why humans explored the galaxy in the first place, to find others worth protecting. Months later, as human diplomatic missions were welcomed with unprecedented enthusiasm across known space, military strategists would puzzle over humanity's transformation from cautious newcomers to indispensable allies almost overnight. The answer was simpler than they imagined. The galaxy had learned that humans didn't just make friends, they made family. And everyone wanted to be part of a species that would face down apex predators with bare hands to keep their children safe. In the end, Sarah Chen's growl in a darkened corridor had become humanity's voice in galactic affairs, a promise that innocence would be protected, the helpless would be defended, and anyone who threatened the vulnerable would discover why humans had climbed to the top of their homeworld's food chain despite having no natural weapons. They had something better than claws or fangs. They had each other.